Last year, the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom found in their annual report that the Communist Party of China maintains an extrajudicial security apparatus called the 610 Office to persecute Falun Gong believers. It is estimated that over half of the 300,000 believed in the Logai prisons are inmates who happen to be part of the Falun Gong. Since the CCP began its crackdown in 1999, thousands have been killed and their organs ripped out of their body while they were still warm and transplanted into the bodies of rich Chinese and foreign accomplices. Members of the CCP do this in order to make themselves and their children rich, and because the Falun Gong was and remains a peaceful and indigenous movement which attracts tens of millions of followers in China. The CCP cannot allow any independent group in China to exist which can motivate so many people. Any group the CCP does not control is a threat and must be penetrated, subverted, and destroyed. The Falun Gong has remained peaceful even in the face of unspeakable brutality. This unbridled obsession with destroying the Falun Gong unmasks the true nature of the CCP.
Chinese doctors and hospitals engaging in large-scale harvesting of human organs for profit. And we actually brought in a guard who brought in pictures. Harry Wu was one who arranged it, and he authenticated, and we had everything he said and everything he brought to us really raked over the coals to make sure it was accurate and there was absolutely no guile or mischief in his presentation. He sat right where you gentlemen sat and talked about how they would kill prisoners, mostly political and religious prisoners, but not execute them, but not kill them completely, take out the desired organs, and then finish the job of murdering that individual. And whatever was needed, kidneys, what is it that you need? They were able to put in the order, and then the wardens at various prisons would fill that order. So far I have spoken of ordinary transplants, but there's a graver prospect. It is that the Chinese military doctors may be engaged in organ harvesting from living prisoners in Chinese camps and prisons. The charge is that many victims are ethnic minorities, and as Mr. Rohrabacher pointed out, members of the Falun Gong, members of the spiritual movement, unjustly held, abused, subjected to psychological and physical torture for nothing more than fidelity to truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance.
I'm Gabriel Danovich. I'm a professor of medicine at UCLA. I'm also the secretary of the International Transplantation Society, which is the NGO for the WHO for matters of transplantation. These Chinese organ recovery practices have wide implications beyond China. China has become a hub for wealthy foreigners seeking quick access to organs. I include Americans who travel to China and other countries to purchase organs.
And now it is widely recognized that China performs the second most amount of transplantations, only second to the United States. Even more troublesome is evidence that China seemed to have an overabundance of organs and that their medical tourism business was booming. They had hospitals advertising all over the internet that they could guarantee patients organs within the time frame of weeks, and they could even schedule them in advance. To put that in perspective, the United States waiting time for a kidney is over 3 years. It became apparent that China's organ harvesting was an extremely profitable business, with the Chinese medical centers often saying that their #1 source of revenue was their transplant unit, and that on their websites they were saying they were charging $30,000 for a cornea, $60,000 for a kidney, $150,000 for a heart. Imagine what one person was worth in the hundreds of thousands.
Do we know if any of this is done on demand? That is, someone on the internet contacts the Chinese, I need a liver, 2 weeks, and say, well, it might take us 3, but we'll find one.
Well, I had a specific patient of mine who went to China despite my request that she not do so, and basically got a kidney more or less on demand. I have a colleague in Israel who had a heart transplant at a given date, which means someone must have been executed for that very purpose, and it's well known that that happens.
Something. There is a doctor, a surgeon in Taiwan who I spoke to in a reasonably confidential manner, who initially was very standoffish, but then he revealed to me that he had been taking his patients over to the mainland for a long time to receive organs, to get new kidneys and livers and so on, aging patients. And he had negotiated for the Chinese price, not to pay the foreigner price, pay the Chinese price. And so he'd gotten to know these doctors very well in the karaoke bars and all the stuff that you do when you negotiate in China. At the end of this negotiation period, they said, hey, you know what, we're not only going to give you the Chinese price, but you're getting the best of the best. You're getting all Falun Gong organs. Now, this man this is a top surgeon in Taiwan. He's an incredibly credible witness.
Let me just ask some specific things to make, just so I'll get this on the record. We have Radio Free Asia and Voice of America and other organizations that are supposed to be representing the values of the American people. Have they been playing a positive or negative role in this whole issue of forced organ harvesting? Have there been interviews of the Voice of America? Have any of you been interviewed with the Voice of America or Radio Free Asia, and what kind of role are they playing? Nope, nobody's been interviewed.
Can I take a shot at that?
Please do.
There is a long-standing taboo in the journalism community about Falun Gong, about this issue. To touch this issue is the third rail of journalism. If you touch it, if you are in Beijing, if you are based in China, you will not be given access to top leaders anymore. I can give you an example of this. I had a friend who wrote for the South China Morning Post. He wrote a very powerful article about Falun Gong back in the early days. The South China Morning Post was blocked. The web version was blocked in China for 6 months. That was at a time when the South China Morning Post was desperately trying to get penetration of that market. This is common. And so there are many dangers to doing this for journalists, and I believe those extend across the board.
Not just journalists in general. I'm talking about now Radio Free Asia and Voice of America. Is that included in? Have any of you been interviewed on this issue, on either one of these? So I know this never happens, but we have our journalists here. Is there a Radio Free Asia or Voice of America journalist with us today? Have you conducted any interviews on this issue before? All right, well, we're going to put you under oath and get you over here now. I think this is very significant. I mean, this is tantamount to one of the most heinous and ghoulish crimes that has been going on this planet for the last 20 years, and yet the outlets that are supposed to be representing American values haven't bothered to do a story on it. I think that this is very significant, and I think it maybe sends an unfortunate message to other journalists throughout the world, and perhaps it sends the message that maybe Americans don't care. Maybe this is just a small group of troublemakers who are trying to cause a problem on this issue. So, no, none of you have been. I think I'll send the letter to Voice of America and Radio Free Asia to find out why this hasn't been covered as it should.
Because this barbaric human rights abuse must be stopped, but to stop it, we first have to further expose it.
This is about the most monstrous crime that I can conceive of. And yet, the Voice of America and Radio Free Asia haven't done any stories about it. Yet we have major journalists in this country and countries throughout the West who have not done stories about this. Shame on our journalist community. I'm a former journalist. That's how I earned my living before I went into politics. Shame.